Hi, Em.
Hello, Christine. This is a new one for the books, I think.
This is a first. We keep doing these firsts.
We keep saying, like, no, everything's normal, and, like, we're not gonna, like, change up the vibe. And then every episode, it's like someone has traveled to a different location.
We're Geminis. We literally don't do the same thing every week. It's impossible for us.
So Christina's back in Ohio, and I am also still in LA, but the wonderful people at Cast said that I could come in by myself, and I was like, that sounds way more fun than sitting in my bedroom. So
Em got a taste of that leather chair and was like, oh, baby, I can't go home now.
I was like, I gotta take this one for the ride for as long as I can. So I'm actually sitting next to the empty chair that used to be where you sat last week.
I hope it's covered in your tears.
It is, actually. I had to switch chairs because that one was all wet with my tears. So, but no, I'm still here. I wanted to look as, beautiful as possible, obviously. So I needed all 9 light fixtures again. Christine's home. That's the answer to where
and
Christine
I'm here
is.
Also. I get to be on apparently a big screen that Em's looking at, which is super fun for me personally.
There's many spots that Christine is in right now because we were trying to figure out how I can look at the camera while also still interacting with Christine's face. This is arguably the one time I thought I wouldn't have to see her face, and now there's just multiples of them. So we've got
nice try.
Your face is down here on a little screen, and it's on a big ass screen over there. So I feel like I'm watching.
This is just like my big moment.
It's like I'm FaceTiming you while you're on a TV show. I'm just like looking at you from both directions. So
I made it. I made it to the big times, the big leagues.
That's what they say around here at your Cast Studios. So
that's what I say in my head all the time. I've made it. I want to say quickly before we start too, I asked Blaze I keep talking about this, but I asked Blaze to go get me some Sour Patch, and he came home with like the family size.
That's a husband right there.
Yeah, so I just like have these now on the desk where I record with you. So I think just for the next foreseeable future, this is like my go-to snack.
Your go-to snack. Speaking of, you triggered a memory for me with the Sour Patch watermelon, because I remembered them scattered across our personal studio when you came and spent the night here, or 2 nights here.
Oh.
The last time that we recorded, the last episode you saw was the day after Christine surprised me. And then later that night, I think, was it later that night that we recorded?
We went to Cheesecake Factory.
Oh, right. We should talk about the Cheesecake Factory. That was way fun. We wouldn't stop talking about it last time, so why should we stop now?
It's like the momentum is going. We can't stop.
We had a blast. We shared some Avo toast, very LA. What else? I had some
cocktails. It was great.
It was, and I had my chicken, and we got like 3 slices of cheesecake. It was a fun time. And then we had a sleepover that night. So
that's right. And Eva came. It was so fun. Like a big slumber party.
It was the first time all 3 of us like used the studio the apartment that we rent together as like a sleepover spot. So,
and it was just filled with candy and wine. So
we got like 20 Taco Bell tacos. We watched Ghost Adventures. And then we, I don't know, gossiped until we fell asleep in like 4 in the morning. It was so much fun.
Em and I did that fun thing we do where we are in the same room late at night and we can't stop speaking. And so we were on an air mattress till like 4 a.m.
cackling like crazy people. Like I think at one point I sobbed. I was just like so overcome with like joy. We were,
like, cry laughing. Yeah.
I was like, I've never laughed this hard in like the entire year. And
we woke up the next morning like pretty much still laughing, which was very creepy. Like we were like, remember how funny that was? And then like continued laughing.
I actually, my phone, I guess at one point while we were laughing so hard, I'd like almost like kind of butt dialed into my camera. And so I actually filmed like 12 minutes of us laughing for no reason.
That's nightmare fuel that you could accidentally record us.
Luckily it was all laughter. But even the night before, Allison was like, so are you going to have a sleepover there? Or are you going to be coming home? And I was like, look, when you get me, Christine, and Eva in a room alone, I can, after 2 tours with them, I'm pretty certain I will be up until 4 in the morning.
And we might not return. We'll see.
Anyway.
Yeah, it was crazy. And basically, Em played the video the next morning, and it was like all I could hear through the like cackling sounds was like Chremmett, and I was like, oh God, help me! Oh my goodness.
You thought I was the asshole. I was like, you literally don't know what the human child looks like. You're like, what is that teeth? I forgot he had teeth. Perfect teeth. And you're like, that's a baby. He shouldn't have adult teeth.
Reminder for people who don't know that story. Christine and I had a baby, and
Our firstborn.
And she rejected our baby. And then
I did not.
She chose a different.
You did.
Anyway, please, if you know who Chremmett is, I'm sorry. And if you don't know, you're probably better off. And if you're Chremmett, I'm sorry, your mother doesn't love you.
The best is that we introduced Chremmett like the week we started putting these on YouTube. And so that was like the worst power you could ever give me, because I just started putting pictures of Chremmett in the video.
No, she started putting pictures of random babies. And then she was like, this is the one we... She still doesn't know what our child looks like.
That's what the video sounded like.
By the way, if you want to make your own baby with someone you love, go to morphthing.com. This is not an ad, but by the way, they should sponsor us considering how often we talk about Chremmett.
Is it called Morph Thing? That's such a horrifying name.
Literally called morphthing.com. And we made a baby.
Oh my God.
We made many babies that night. in a hotel in New York City, by the way. We made a lot of babies.
I made one with ZB. It was like me and Zach Bagans' face.
It had a strong nose. It
had a strong nose. And then I put it on Patreon, and I feel like Patreon was like, "What? Why are you putting this here? This is not the bonus content we asked for." But I put it on Patreon.
Nobody asked for it. God didn't ask for that. It just happened.
So I put it on Patreon, and it's just a video of M going, like, I'm making a video of me and Zach after many glasses of wine. Not a video, a morph baby.
You kind of froze there for a second, but I'm going to think that was like, I think that's what the Lord wanted there.
Shut up. Okay, I have one more line. I see that you're trying to kick me off this conversation, but I'm going to say one more thing, and I will fight through the static, and I will fight against the word of God, and I'm going to tell you that I made this baby with ZB, and then M just said, what did you say?
I said, yuck. I mean, congratulations.
Yeah, yuck. I mean, congratulations. And that line has just stayed with me. I'm like, I'm afraid that if I ever do have a child, I'm just going to look at it and go, yuck. I mean, congratulations. And I won't be surprised.
I'll at least whisper it that time. Like, with Zach, though, I mean, that was the strongest nose and the strongest jaw I'd ever seen on a fucking newborn.
It had big eyebrows, too.
It was a really intense baby.
Okay, you can talk now.
Anyway, wow. For those of you still listening, and for those of you who have just finished up figuring out what your baby looks like on morphthing.com, welcome.
You're welcome.
To another segment of And That's Why We Drank. By the way, Chremmett was why I drank for a solid 3 weeks. Chremmett
was why I couldn't drink, because he was my bun in the oven.
Oh, no. Okay. It's just terrible. So anyway, how has Ohio been since you've been back, real quick?
Oh, it's been great. Thank you very much. I'm just eating a lot of candy and trying to stay indoors. And I found Gio a new doggy daycare place, so he's been going there.
Is he socializing well? Is he getting used to the house all right?
Yeah. He loves the house. Junie loves the house. Also, there are painters here painting, and I just had like a miniature meltdown because I picked all these nice shades of gray, and then everything turned blue, which is apparently a thing that happens. But I like cried a little bit about it because I was like, "Well, I just paid several $1,000s, and now everything's blue."
Oh boy!
But it was yellow before, so it's better than nothing.
That's true.
So Gio's at daycare, and they keep sending little report cards with like which friends he played with that day. It's the sweetest thing.
What's like the best report card you've gotten so far? What's his like cutest update?
Blaze and I can like read between the lines because it'll say like, "Today I was very sweet and quiet," and I'm like, okay, so he hid in the corner like underneath the table. Like, who are his favorite? Like, today I played with the following friends, and it's like, Marissa, and I'm like, okay, Marissa's like the employee, so
Marissa's definitely a human
not playing
name.
with dogs. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, he's having a good time, but he misses you, Em.
Look, I know we text. I know. We have a code, an SOS code, in case it becomes too much and he ever needs me to take him away from you. Hasn't happened yet.
It's gonna happen. I don't doubt it.
I see him typing the little bubble sometimes and then they disappear. So I think he's like on the verge.
And like mom walks in the room and he's like, damn it.
He's like, he hides his burner phone that I mailed him. Yeah. Anyway, so getting to spooky things, the story that I am covering this week is something that was requested back during Christmas, and this has been on my list ever since then. And it's interesting because it's like, from what I've been able to read, it's known, I guess it's more of a lore than a haunted house, even though it's like explicitly a haunted house, but everyone knows that it's fake, but everyone still goes with the stories. It's like, I guess, an urban legend. It's in Pittsburgh. It's got a couple names. It's called the Congelier House. It's also called the Haunted House on Ridge Avenue. And it's called the House That the Devil Built.
Oh.
So it's got multiple names. And everyone in Pittsburgh is like, oh yeah, that house is haunted. And then like, they're like, it's really not. But we just all say it's haunted. It's very weird. It's a weird situation here. So it seems like this house has 5 different chunks to it for its like the different legends that people hear or the different stories people tell about it. There's 5 different plot points, I guess. But all of them have like heavily been debunked and like everyone knows it. And they're just like, okay, yeah, but like we just tell people that's what happened. So I think it's kind of more of a rite of passage as a teenager that you like go up to the spooky house or something like that.
My new favorite toy is here.
What?
And I'm
Tell
not
me,
playing with any toy ever again. It's like Christmas came early. Okay.
Tell me all about your toy.
Okay, listen. I don't know if you guys listen to the ads, but you need to stop and listen to this one because this is about a product that I'm so amped about. It's called DrinkWorks, and it works like a fancy automatic espresso machine. You know, those really nice and fancy ones.
Mm-hmm.
And you press the button and it just kind of like makes your drink, except instead of coffee, it's cocktails.
It's literally if Christine were a transformer, she would be a DrinkWorks machine and then also a human being named Christine.
It's so amazing. So it's like super convenient because you insert a drink pod and in 60 seconds you have a perfectly chilled cocktail or mixed drink in your house, especially now. I mean, it's like we need to wear masks, not go to bars, be as careful as we can. Now I can just sit in my own house and make my own bar. And I can pick the drink because I can do anything. Okay, listen, they have everything from sangria to rose spritzers. Okay, so you can do like a little Jimmy Buffett beach vibe, or you can do like a jazz bar.
You had me at Jimmy Buffet. And also like, just so I could like also hop on, because I do know about this product because Christine won't shut up about it, but there are flavors for everyone's taste. I mean, from tropical cocktails, hashtag Jimmy Buffet, to classic mixed drinks. And I know you said sangria and rose spritzers, but they have more than 25 drinks. And it's probably the perfect way to have an old favorite or try a new one or let Transformer Christine just concoct one for you.
It's true. Okay, so here's what happens. I used to go to bars back in my heyday, you know, and cocktails are so expensive. They're like $20, at least in LA. I'm sure they're still pricey elsewhere, and they're amazing like that. But DrinkWorks, you get yourself one and you're spending a whole lot less money for the exact same quality. And by the way, they have a new flavor that I just tried called Jack Daniel's Lemonade. I'm not even a whiskey person, and this is so good. And it's finally one that Blaze and I can drink together. It combines refreshing lemonade with premium Jack Daniel's whiskey. And oh boy, I mean, my favorite is the Cosmo because like I can just sit at my home and drink a Cosmo and feel like I'm part of Sex in the City. But all of them are amazing.
So for our listeners, they've already taken $100 off the price, and now they're even throwing in free shipping. So it's the best deal that they're offering, and it's for a limited time only. So please don't wait.
Don't wait.
Go for it, Christine. I know you just want to scream more about this.
I just want to talk about it forever. The best way to get this amazing drink maker with the automatic savings plus free shipping, go to drinkworks.com. That's DRINKWORKS.com. There's no need to use a code. The best deal, like we said, is already included, but that's drinkworks.com.
And remember, please enjoy responsibly with Transformer Christine.
Listen, I'm of the belief that if you put energy into something, it will reflect that energy. So I don't know, maybe it is haunted because everyone is acting like it's haunted.
It probably is now like an accidental vortex of energy.
Right? Like people are like creating some, I don't know.
If enough people
energy.
interested in spirits who probably have spirits somewhat attached to them going to this place, someone's bound to hang out there a little longer than they should, I think.
I'm saying.
All right. So anyway, here is the Congelier House, haunted house on Ridge Avenue, and the house that the devil built. So it's known as the most haunted hoax in America. It's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it was first mentioned in the book Haunted Houses by Richard Weiner and Nancy Osborne. And so we jump right into the story here. This is basically kind of different than what I usually do because I'm just straight up debunking every storyline in this the whole time. I'm sorry.
Oh.
But it's good. And I'm sure people in Pittsburgh are going to like this story. So
maybe I can rebunk it.
Okay, wait a minute. Everything I say is a lie. I should have done this on April Fool's Day and really messed with people. So, too late. It's June. So, the first part of the story, or I guess where people usually start when they tell this urban legend, is that the house started with a family called the Congeliers. The husband's name was Charles Wright Congelier, and he made a fortune in Texas, and then he ended up moving from Texas after the Civil War. With his wife named Lyda, Lyda, Lyda. And I guess they had a servant named Essie. And so they decided that they were going to leave Texas, and they took a steamer boat down the river and ended up in Pittsburgh. And they were like, this'll do.
Yeah, sure.
And as you do, just take a never-ending boat ride.
That's like our tour.
With all of your stuff.
Steamship.
Wait a minute. Let's do a steamship tour next time. Let's just do that. And just ride down the river and just talk about ghosts everywhere we go.
Like really slowly.
Almost like it's not moving at all. So the boat docked in Pittsburgh, and Charles Congelier and his wife were like, this looks like a good place. Let's just unpack here. And so they ended up building this house. This was in the 1860s. They ended up building the Congelier House, which was at 1129 Ridge Avenue. And it was one of the finest houses in the area. It was known for social gatherings and elite parties. And he became a pillar of the community. And he did not become a killer, but he became a pillar at the very least. And again, he built the house in the 60s, and it was called 1122 Ridge Avenue. Only a couple of years later, I guess Congelier and the servant Essie started having an affair. Or that's how the story goes, at least. And one day, Lyda found out about it. She was calling for Essie, and Essie wasn't, responding to her calls, or she wasn't anywhere to be found. So Lyda started looking for her and heard some very interesting, rambunctious sounds in their bedroom. And so she goes down to the kitchen in a passionate rage and grabs a butcher knife and a cleaver. And she goes upstairs and she stabs her husband 30 times. Oh my God. So she's the killer. The pillar married the killer this time.
That's a twist, though.
That's the one I've been looking for this whole time. So then it's alleged that she also then probably killed Essie as well. And days later, these are socialites in the area, and nobody had heard from them. So one of their friends went to go knock on the door and just check in on them. And this is where it gets very urban mythy, where you kind of just, whoever's telling the story gets really into it and is knocked on the door and didn't hear anything, but heard just one creak in a room. And you just kind of get real,
finesse it.
Yeah, really zhuzh it up. And
zhuzh it up.
The basic plot points are that the friend knocks on the door, doesn't hear anything, goes in, hears this weird creaking and starts following it and asking if anyone's home, and doesn't hear anyone saying anything, but keeps hearing this creaking. And eventually goes into one of the back rooms and sees Lyda in a rocking chair and just rocking in the chair, not responding to him. And he basically says, are you okay? What's going on? And she's not even looking at him. She's just staring out the windows, rocking and holding what looks like a baby, like a little pink bundle. And because she's not responding, he's waving his hand in front of her face. And Nothing. So he puts his arms in and tries to grab the bundle out from her and realizes it's covered in blood. Freaks out, drops it, and out rolls Essie's head. And that's like one of the big like urban legends of like someone was beheaded there.
Ooh, boy.
So that's the first part of this. So let's break that down, aka totally debunk it.
Dang it. I thought at least this part, I mean, not that I'm happy anyone was killed, but I was like, that is quite a tale. I should have known you were going to debunk
Too tall
it.
of a tale for me. I'm going to shorten it.
Yeah, it's pretty damn tall.
First of all, no one named Charles Wright Congelier ever existed. There's no records of him or his wife, Lida, at all. There was a Charles Springer that lived a couple houses down at a different time. That's like there's a Charles at some point.
Why would they come up with that? If you're making up a story, make it like John Smith. Like, why would you make it the most confusing name ever?
So there is a reason for that. I'm glad you asked. So there is no record of a Charles Wright Congelier or a Lida Congelier, and there's no record of either people by those name at any point living in Pittsburgh. There's also no record of a murder ever happening in this house. There's no crime. And also, like, if it's a socialite who murdered her husband and, like, beheaded his mistress, that would have made, like, the front page of the news. So, like...
You'd think so.
Unless they have, like, some other really wild shit going on where they're like, that was too tame to talk about.
I don't know. It's Pittsburgh. Hey.
So they've got... there's like no news reports of this, no crime reports of this. The house was also described as a mansion because he was a very rich socialite, but the house was like kind of a middle-class house in a neighborhood where there weren't a lot of rich people. So it doesn't really make sense geographically that would have ever been a mansion to begin with.
I see.
And also the house that stood there for a long time. So just spoiling this for everyone, the spot is no longer a house. It's actually like part of like a highway or something. But when the house stood there, it was never a mansion. It was kind of a smaller house. And it wasn't built until the 1880s. And the story goes that they built it in the 1860s.
Oh, damn.
Also at the time, the address was different. It wasn't 1129 Ridge Avenue until the early 1900s. It was actually 104 Oak Street or something like that, or 140 Ridge Avenue, 140 Ridge. So a lot of information is wrong there. Also, the only death around this time that had ever happened in the house was in the 1890s, which was 30 years later when a tenant was living there. So it was never actually owned by the Congelier family. So you were asking how come they used such a complicated name. So the Congeliers actually do exist. And the argument could be made that it's called the Congelier House now because one of the most recent families that lived there were the Congeliers, and it just kind of got known as that.
So they were like, we didn't ask to get sucked into this ridiculous story.
Yeah, it's like if you living in the house that you're in that's like crazy haunted, but now it's called the Schieffer House, and it's like, oh, fuck.
I actually am really on board with that. I would actually prefer that we start doing that now.
Okay, so maybe the Congeliers felt the same. Actually, wait a minute.
Maybe they embraced it. Yeah,
they were like, you're damn right, the Congelier House was haunted. So, basically, it was actually their original name. The family was not called the Congeliers. They were originally called the Canceliers, but it's they're Italian. They're from Sicily, and their name kept getting misspelled just in general, but also it was being published wrong in newspapers and things like that. So they ended up changing it to Congelier when they moved here.
It'll just be easier to like fuck up our own name.
It'll be easier to have an equally complicated name. Yeah. So, anyway, so they ended up changing it. So they were originally the Canceliers, and they did move into the house in the 1920s. But by that point, they were known as the Congeliers, and all this lore had already happened around the house. So that's probably how it got the name Congelier House. It was built in 1886 by John Jacob Lawrence. So a lot of people say, oh, well, no, the Congeliers built this house. No, it was John Jacob Lawrence in the 1880s. And a lot of people can't actually find records of even the husband of the Cancelier family owning this house in the 20s, but it was because he was actually part of organized crime. And so he left the house in his wife's name, which was something that they did pretty regularly, I guess, to avoid the property being seized by law enforcement. Sure. So So people also argue, well, the Congeliers aren't a real family either because their names aren't on any records, but his wife is, if you look for it.
I see. Okay.
So that was a lot of debunking. Basically, that story just did not ever fucking happen.
Boo.
The second part to this is that in 1892, so this was realistically, this was, I guess, 6 years after the house had actually been built in the real world. So the house is 6 years old. And in 1892, the house was turned into apartments for nearby railroad workers. And that being said, even though the story I just told wasn't accurate, people do still swear that they're hearing some weird shit and experiencing some creepy stuff in this house. And so it could have been, the stories that were already being passed on at that time, or maybe there really was something going on there. But the railroad workers say that they would hear blood-curdling screams. They would see an apparition of a woman walking through the halls and crying in empty rooms. They also saw black shadows. They would hear growling from the walls. They would get pushed. They would see weird orbs and lights, and they would smell really gross smells. Apparently, others have also heard a woman rocking in a chair and humming lullabies, which sounds like
goodbye.
Sounds like what Lyda Congelier was doing. So that
To
kind
the
of
head.
to the head. So it sounds kind of like that story at least already existed by this point, and it was only like 1892. So
That's so weird. Yeah.
So that story is arguably the oldest, and people are still like seeing the aftershock of that, I guess, of hearing a woman humming. So after it was just so scary for them to be living there, they all just moved out. They were like, we would rather just not live here or work as a railroad worker. So they ended up abandoning the house. And then 2 years later, in 1901, Dr. Adolf Brunrichter, Richter, Richter?
Yeah, Richter.
Okay. Sounds German, so I'm just trusting you.
Sometimes Em looks at the monitor, and so I think they're looking at someone else, but apparently it's my face on the monitor, so I just stare back, waiting for whoever Em's talking to.
I want the biggest part of your wisdom. I'm just tell me everything. No, but so it sounds German. So Brunrichter?
So does Adolf. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Okay, I didn't want to assume anything, but yeah, that sounds about right to me.
No, you're in the right.
So 1901. So Dr. Adolf Brunrichter, he ended up moving in after the house had been abandoned for 2 years by the railroad workers. So they knew right away when he bought this house, he just seemed off to people.
Oh boy.
He was kind of a weirdo. He kept to himself. He stayed in the house. He didn't socialize with people. And then one day the neighbors called the police because they saw this massive red flash from inside the house. And then everyone's furniture shook, windows shattered. You could hear screaming in there. So it was some sort of explosion happened inside the house. So apparently it smelled like ozone, sidewalks cracked, and furniture in other people's houses shook. So people thought there was some sort of earthquake, and that was just ground zero. And so the police and the fire department ended up going to find him in this house, and they never found him, but they did find a decomposing woman's body on the bed.
Sorry.
Her head was also missing.
No.
So don't worry, they found it very quickly in another room. And apparently there were 4 to 5 other women's bodies that they found. Either there's some stories saying that the bodies were buried under the floor and they had to find them that way, or that there were graves already made for them near the house, or that the bodies were just in another fucking room. But basically they found several beheaded women in this house.
Nah. Don't love that.
And after looking a little further, they found out that the electrical explosion that happened might have been one of his experiments, because they found out that he was experimenting. He was trying to prolong life by beheading people and then trying to sustain them and keep them alive. So in one of his accidents, I guess the house exploded and he took off and they never found him.
Tell me this is one of your fake ones.
So this is one of the fake ones.
Oh, thank God.
So this is a big story, though, of like, you know, how easy would it be if someone new moved to Pittsburgh and was like, oh, you know, they found like 5 beheaded like bodies in there after another woman was beheaded in there. So I think that also could have been where the first story was inspired, because maybe this story, one of the stories probably inspired the other, because like why else would there be 2 beheaded women stories?
Yeah, they're very connected.
So this one could be like the new, updated, revamped version of the Congelier
What
story.
year was this second one?
This one was 1901. So this was supposedly only like 40 years later.
Okay.
But 6 beheaded women in 40 years in the same house is a lot of beheaded women.
Statistically, I think that's pretty high.
That's pretty high. I've only had like 3 at my place. So,
lucky.
So apparently there is an additional story. There's like a caveat that's still fake. That apparently police later ended up finding Adolf, and he was like homeless, and they arrested him. They arrested him for drunk in public, and he ended up admitting everything to them. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm the guy that used to live there. That's how they got this whole story of I was trying to prolong life." And then they were like, "We don't have enough evidence," and they only put him in jail for like a year, and then no one ever heard of him again. And we know that we also know that that's fake, because there's no record of this man existing ever. So there's no arrest.
So not even the homeless guy.
Yeah, there's no arrest report of that happening later on in life anyway.
What?
But so anyway, there was never, the house was never purchased by an Adolf Brunrichter. There's no record of that man existing at all. There's no papers that apparently when he was found in the 1920s and he was like, I'm Adolf, this happened, they wrote a newspaper article about it called the Pittsburgh Spook Man. But that news article has never been found. So that's hard to believe too. There's no mention of the explosion or beheaded women in any of the news reports. Again, that would have been frontline paper. Front page. I'm so stupid.
I went right with it.
I heard
Frontline
it and it
like
felt right. It felt right.
Frontline is the flea and tick medication.
Oh, right. Yes, that sounds right. That sounds more right. Definitely not. You're not going to find that story on the back of some flea medication.
I mean, you might these days. You never know.
That would be a fun. Anyway, okay. Sorry, I was about to get into branding. There's also no record. There's no record of anyone named Adolf living on Ridge Avenue. So people thought maybe he changed his last name, but that's not the case. And there's, again, no arrest report of Brunrichter's arrest in New York in the 1920s. So all of that is fake.
Damn.
The third part is kind of a shorter story, which is that the house then became abandoned and gained even more of a reputation for being so wildly haunted. I guess a lot of people, this was during the 1920s, so this was during the spiritualist movement. A lot of people and psychics and mediums were all interested in visiting the house, so it kind of just built up its notoriety. Actually, Thomas Edison in 1920 is said to have visited the house, and he felt some really weird stuff, and nobody knows much more detail than that, except for whatever he did experience inspired him to create his spirit phone, which was one of his like failed inventions that he never got to finish. But he did, it is known that he tried to make equipment that helped you connect or communicate with the dead. So
wow.
The running rumor is that this house is what inspired his interest in that. So
I see.
And there's one medium. I don't know if she was a regular medium that visited or if she owned the house for a little bit, because it was abandoned at times. And then in the times where it was occupied, it was trading hands a lot. But Julia Murray either visited a lot or lived there at one point. And she said that she felt spirits around her that were powerful enough to throw objects by themselves, and they had the potential to kill, and they also had the potential to travel outside of the house so they would follow you.
Uh-oh.
Casual. And also, apparently Thomas Edison reportedly worked on this spirit phone until he died, but no one's ever really seen a prototype of it, or it's not really well known. And the story to this is that all of that could be true, but there's very little evidence of a Julia Murray even existing, and there's no record of Edison visiting this house, which again, if like a famous inventor was coming to the town, you would have seen it in the paper. So
yeah,
a lot of this
probably.
is dependent on the fact that like there were really shitty journalists at that time, or this just didn't happen. So like,
damn.
It's one of those two things where like someone did not know like how to write a story, or the story just never existed. So the fourth section of this, the fourth of five, is that in 1925, after it had been abandoned for a little bit, nearby was a gas company called the Equitable Gas Company, the EGC. And it was only a few blocks away, and they were in the middle of building this massive storage complex for natural gas. And to cut costs, originally there were American workers there. They relieved all of them to then hire on Italian immigrants. And apparently they then reused this house as apartments again. So just like how the railroad workers were living there, were boarding there, these Italian immigrants were living there while they were working at the gas company. And again, the workers immediately felt some really weird stuff, but it was explained away by the landlord and their boss that it was just the American workers who had gotten fired. They were pissed off, so they were pranking the new employees who were going to have to live there so that they would quit. It's a really weird stretch, but...
Yeah, it seems like they had a lot of energy and time on their hands to be pulling that off, but okay.
Basically, it was like, oh no, you're being pranked by people who got fired before you, but who never lived here. So...
oh, yeah, true.
It makes no sense. But it was their way of explaining it away. And then one day, basically they ignored it as long as they could, all these footsteps and screams and shadows. They ignored it as long as they could until one day there was like a dozen of them all sitting at a table together. And two of them are brothers. And one of them got up to like clear the dishes for everyone and went into the kitchen. And you could hear him talking to you like from the kitchen. They were having kind of a back and forth with him. And then they realized at one point that he never came back into the room. So his brother gets up to go into the kitchen and check on him. And all of a sudden you hear the brother screaming. And so everyone else in the dining room runs over to see what's happened. And the basement door, which is right next to the kitchen, the basement door is open and neither of the brothers are there anymore. And they go downstairs and they see that one of them has hanged himself from the ceiling beam and the other one has a huge wooden plank through his chest and out the other side within minutes of having just talked to both of them.
Oh, Lord.
And basically, then the group of men obviously freaked out, but they couldn't even get up the stairs because they felt unseen forces shoving them around. They felt cold breeze. They heard footsteps and laughter, and they saw the door slam in the basement by itself.
Oh, no.
And then they finally got upstairs. They called the police, and the police considered it both deaths accidental because they think that there was a, I guess one of the steps down to the basement, they must have had something where brother number one tripped on it and then his neck got caught in wiring on the way down, falling down the stairs. The second brother probably saw his brother down there, also tripped on the same thing, and he just landed on a loose piece of lumber that went through him.
Oh my God.
So they think it was accidental. But basically, that story also doesn't really seem to hold any real weight. Apparently in the 1920s, the EGC did lay off American workers and replace them with Italian immigrants, but there's no record of any accidental deaths at that location while the immigrants were staying there. So... Okay. Which, again, like a death that wild and at this point a notoriously haunted house would have been in the news.
Also, they probably would have looked into murder if they stumbled upon the scene and they were like, "Oh, this was an accident."
It was an accident that 5 minutes ago you were talking to both of them, and now they've both had incredibly awful deaths.
Yeah.
So anyway, that doesn't seem to hold any real truth either. Just because like someone would have had proof of that or there would be some record of it. Right. 2 years later, the same company, the EGC, there were 16, and remember, this was only like a couple blocks away. This is why the workers were staying there. But 16 of the workers at the EGC were on the roof of the company because apparently they were fixing a gas leak. I remember this is a natural gas storage complex. So if there's a gas leak in this massive building in town, it's a big problem. So unfortunately, they didn't fix it. And not only that tank, but 2 other tanks nearby all exploded throughout the town. All 16 of those men were like hurled off the roof of the building. And then there were windows were blowing out. Buildings were shaking from like 20 miles away, apparently. Trains had been knocked over. Like it was so heavy, trains got knocked over. Buildings and homes were destroyed and people were buried under the rubble, even those who were trying to rescue everybody. Neighborhoods were flooded from broken main lines and there were hundreds left homeless. At least 24 to 28 people were killed and over 600 people were injured. Sadly, I don't know how exaggerated that is, but for the most part, that is all true. That story is all fucking true.
So, like, into the fact that these were all these deaths were not true. Oh boy.
There are news clippings saying like 24 dead, 500 injured, 28 dead, 600 injured. So
that's so sad.
Unfortunately, that's true. But the lore about that story still surrounds 1129 Ridge Avenue because it was only a couple blocks away. And the story goes that all of the homes in the neighborhood surrounding this house were totally fine, except for the fact that like maybe there was a little structural damage, but like nothing really bad. But that one house specifically, even though it was surrounded by houses that were fine, that house literally fucking disappeared. Like there was all that was left was a massive like 100-foot crater, like a crater hole, like a crater hole, as if the whole house had been dragged down. And a lot of people telling the lore say it got dragged down to hell by the devil himself. So
he didn't do a very good job.
He did only like 80 feet down to the ground is how far hell goes, apparently.
Maybe hell's a lot closer than we think, and that wouldn't surprise me, I suppose.
Actually, you saying that, I feel like I should feel shocked, and yet I'm not.
Right.
But so basically, the story goes that after that explosion, the house just vanished, and the house was intentionally forgotten about because nobody went to rebuild a demonic house after all of the stories over all the decades. And after that, the house became a highway expansion. They just like paved on top of it because they wanted to ignore it.
Wow.
The real story is that house actually never got pulled underground by the devil. I don't know if that shocks you. But it only
a little bit.
It only suffered minor damage. It had like some windows that were broken. And
what is wrong with people just like forcing these weird stories onto this house?
Can you imagine being that house where like you just are never like, it probably never wanted to come back either. It was like, leave me alone, bullies. Like
it was like, please suck me into the ground.
Every 10 years, it's like, what are people going to say about me next? So actually a descendant of the Congelier family, remember it was originally the Cancelier family. They changed. At this point, they're actually the Congelier family. So one descendant named Robert, he said that the house was actually around for years after that explosion. Interestingly enough, during the explosion, so it's kind of a full circle and kind of this weird, like fucked up poetic like storyline here. So all the stories started with this Congelier house and like nothing but tragedy afterwards. But an actual member from the Congelier family did pass away because of the explosion nearby.
Oh, no.
She was our age. Her name was Marie in the stories, but apparently she actually was Mary. But in the stories, it's just kind of morphed into Marie. And some glass that had exploded from somewhere flew past her, and it ended up severing an artery. And so she bled out on the way to the hospital. Very tragic.
Oh, fuck.
That alone is pretty awful. And since so people think that since she, a Congelier, actually did die only a couple blocks away from the house, that is where the Congelier story happened, or the origin of the Congelier lore. Because up until the 20s, maybe there was a family that lived there in the 1800s, and there was this lore already of someone being beheaded there, but they just kind of heard the Congelier name And then they were like, okay, let's just add that name to it.
I mean, to be honest, like they can't even spell Mary right or Marie right,
Right.
and they can't spell chandelier or whatever the hell their name was. So I mean, at this point, like I don't trust them to write any story correctly.
But yeah, exactly. So basically, because that is one confirmed death with that actual last name, and she was a descendant of the Congeliers, who at one point did own the house.
Right.
So I think, yeah, because her family at one point owned the house in the 20s when it kept being handed off in between people. So I think it was like, okay, well, several generations have lived in this house, and one of them did die in this, and they were attached somehow to this allegedly haunted place. Let's just call it the Congelier House. So basically, it ends with people have circulated rumors around the Congeliers for decades, and that's how it got the name. And local lore suggests that this explosion is a related story to the house, even though it was a couple blocks away, and it was just a gas explosion that had nothing to do with this house, because there's that small section where a Congelier is involved in both of these stories. It gets attached to the lore of the haunted house on Ridge Avenue, especially because several mediums in the 20s said that the house was so evil and the spirits could travel away that they could curse other buildings in theory. And that building was so close that maybe its explosion was caused by one of the ghosts at the Congelier House. It was a quite a stretch. But
yes.
Anyway, this is probably the only time I will say this, but I have a hunch that all of the lore around the Congelier House is not correct. Either way, I wanted to cover it. So that was the story of the Congelier House / the haunted house on Ridge Avenue / the house that the devil built. Or not built.
I mean, / the chandelier house.
/ the chandelier.
I love a good urban legend, so that was still fun.
Well, there you go. Anyway.
And honestly, it was nice to hear that not all of these people were beheaded and murdered, just like some of them. So.
Yeah, all the people who didn't die were beheaded in stories, and the people who did die actually had an arguably equally tragic death. So
yeah, like really gruesome and awful. Yeah, that's true.
At least of like the 10 deaths that we heard about, at least only one of them was true. I wish 0 were.
I know.
At least it wasn't 10.
Yeah, like at least 9 of them didn't end up coming to fruition. So
right.
I guess that's one way to look at it.
It's one really awful way to look at it, but I can't think of a good way. Yeah. So anyway. Well,
thank you, Em. I'd never heard of it before, and I like Pittsburgh, which is a controversial opinion as a Cincinnatian, but we went there for a tour.
I know. Remember the time we had a show in Pittsburgh? You remember what you did on stage?
I don't think it was smart. Blaze is still not a fan of what I did. I wore a Steelers jersey on stage, and of course everyone freaked out. Especially a lot of the dudes who were there who later said that their significant other had dragged them there. And we get a lot of drag along sometimes. They were like, oh, yeah, Steelers. And then I took that off. Not in like I took it off. And then there was a Bengals jersey underneath. And that really didn't get anyone fired up.
And I stood there and I smiled the whole time because I don't understand football. So I was like,
I really didn't want to be a part of this.
I was like, I think everyone hates you now, Christine. At least you made me look good today. So
I remember that.
I'm everyone's favorite.
All the drag-alongs were like, I don't know who that is, but I like that one better. That was fun though. And I remember we stayed in this really cool, like hipster hotel that was very like industrial. And I just thought it was so cool. It was like in an old high school, and they had like the high school gym. It was so cool. Anyway,
yeah.
I really like Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Wait, and then there's that damn marathon going on, and so we had to like walk.
Fuck.
We had to park.
I knew I hated this story. I was like, yeah, I do remember loving it. Why do I hate it though? And then you said that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We parked like a mile away and then had to walk to the car at like 5 a.m.
No, what Christine is not saying is that for the people who literally came to town to talk about true crime and how you should be like on your toes at all points, we literally walked through like this old scary ass park in the middle of the night in Pittsburgh.
That was my idea. I'm sorry.
With all of our expensive shit, by the way. I was like, we are gonna get so fucking robbed. I was like, I don't even know where we are. This could be a safe spot or not. but it's dark. I'm scared. It's the middle of the night, and I hate you, Christine.
And when we say expensive shit, I don't know what Emmett's talking about. Except that all our Gucci accessories we were wearing those.
Oh, right. This wasn't our current tour. This was just like our laptops.
Yes. Okay. I was like, what? Expensive shitter. I was like, I don't know about
our new
you,
tour, by the way, comes with some pretty expensive stuff that we carry around.
I thought you
everywhere.
meant like my Steelers jersey. I was like, yeah, no, that was from Amazon.
No. Anything Christine brought, please just rob her.
Just rob our Steelers jersey. No, so there was thank God, no giant suitcase of equipment that time, but we were walking to the hotel, and I was like, well, here's a shortcut. And Em was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And I was like, well, it's fine.
And it was uphill. I was over it. I was like, it was
literally an abandoned playground at like 11:30 at night. And you were like, I don't want to do this.
If I've ever wanted to commit a murder, it's exactly right now.
You were so mad at me. Oh my God. Good times.
Anyway,
I love
so
Pittsburgh.
angry. Anyway.
Okay, well, I'm going to come your way, and my story's in Ventura County, California.
Hey, okay. I don't know why I'm excited
not too far
about
from
that.
you. I don't know, because it's like I'm coming right back to you in your leather chair.
Finally.
If only.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is the story of the abduction and murder, spoilers, of Sherri Dally.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Sherri who?
So, Dally.
Dally, okay.
Like dilly dally.
You mean the thing I do all the goddamn time? Yes, got it.
Yes.
Got it.
Except for that time we were in the playground and you were like, we're not dilly-dallying today.
This is not the time for that. Exactly.
Me and my Gucci belt need to get back to the hotel. I was like, our expensive. What are you talking about?
Look, I'm used to now. My job when we travel now is to carry like all the suitcases full of equipment, and so like I'm very aware of all the stuff that we have.
You are, and like the equipment like we need for every show, so it's like you.
I don't know why that became my job, but like Chris. Well, it's probably because I travel.
Because you took the job. Listen, no one forced it upon you.
Okay, that's probably true. But I definitely am the one.
You were the one who purchased it and was like, I want to take care. And you literally told me I was not good at using it. And so it's your job.
Okay.
We're not going to get into this today, but like, let's stay on Zoom after this recording to chat.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yes.
People are at Cast are like, but you have to go home first, Em. I don't want to be part of this.
But also, please don't rob us. Like now, especially now. Like maybe a year ago in Pittsburgh, it would have been okay. But now, please don't.
No, yeah. And the things that we have that are expensive are not things anyone wants. So don't worry about it.
Absolutely true.
Okay. Okay, so we are going back to 1996.
Love
and
it.
This is in Ventura County, California, which is pretty close to LA.
Yes.
Around 7 a.m., Sherri Dally, who is a 35-year-old mother of two, leaves her and her husband's family home in Ventura County to run some errands. So first, as always, she drops her kids off at school and drives her van over to the local Target to get a Mother's Day gift.
Okay.
Inside the store, she has a short conversation with a friend who is also actually the head of security there, and then shops and makes her purchases and leaves the store. According to the closed circuit TV, she leaves the store around 9:30 and heads into the parking lot. Out there, witnesses later testified that a blonde woman in a tan suit walked up to her, identified herself as a police officer, told Sherri that she was under arrest because they had found drugs in her home. Then Sherri put her wrists behind her back, and the blonde detective put her in the back seat of a teal Nissan, and they drove away with Sherri in the back seat.
What?
So this is the opening montage of this story.
What a montage. Okay.
I know, right? I mean, and then the teal Nissan, it's like you think you can't get any wilder, and then
At first I was confused about the tan suit, and then I was like, I'm sure Mariska Hargitay has worn something like that at some point. So I excused that immediately. And then you threw the teal Nissan at me, and I was like, okay, at that point I would have asked to see a badge. Like,
I would have had some questions, right? Like, yeah, you had to see. Hold on, I'll get in the like. You're literally already in handcuffs. So you're like,
I was like,
okay,
you look like Mariska. I get it, but like, I'm gonna need some more proof.
Like full respect, honestly, but just need a little more.
Okay, got it.
So around 3:30 p.m. that day, so that was early in the morning, like 9:30. Around 3:30 p.m. that day, Sherri's husband, Michael Dally, called the school from his job at Vaughn's Supermarket, where he was a manager, to see if his boys had been picked up from school. The school office manager says yes, and Michael responds, "Really?" And then the secretary corrects herself and says, oh, wait, no, sorry. You're right. They haven't been picked up. So Michael goes to pick the boys up at home and then heads home to see if Sherri's there, and she is not home yet. So at 4 p.m., Michael calls police and is like, hey, my wife is missing. And they're like, well, you need to wait 72 hours to file a report because Sherri is an adult. She seems psychologically sound. But Michael starts freaking out. He calls friends and family to look for Sherri. And as they're searching, they find Sherri's unlocked van in the Target parking lot where she had been earlier that day.
Okay.
They find her keys in the ignition. Her driver's license is attached to the keychain, and her purses are in the back seat. Sorry, her purchases are in the back seat. I was like, her purses? Oh, maybe she's walking around with some expensive Gucci going on here.
I mean, she might be carrying all of our weird laptops and equipment, or all of our stage equipment for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, no one even knows. It's all there in the back seat. So all her purchases are in the back seat. And Michael tells the security guard, the Target security guard, that Sherri has been, quote, nabbed.
Nabbed.
Just a weird, yeah.
Is that like a weird, is that slang for kidnapped?
I think so. Like, oh, someone nabbed her. Right?
Sure. I mean, if someone said it, I would understand it. But now that we're isolating the word, I'm like, why?
Yeah, it's really weird when you put it around quotes. Yeah, it makes it seem really strange. That's true. So obviously now they have this car and they call, they inform the police, and the police see this abandoned vehicle and are like, uh-oh, this might actually be a missing persons case. There's no reason why this car would be abandoned with all her stuff in it, including ID. So then they start investigating. So witnesses from the Target parking lot immediately tell investigators, hey, by the way, there was this blonde chick in a tan suit who appeared to be a cop and arrest Sherri this morning. Okay. And another witness is like, there was also a teal Nissan, and that witness was M, who was like,
that was me being like,
off.
I was like, that one, that was too colorful to not be mentioned. That one, that's a weird one. Mariska just waltzed right in like it was her goddamn Nissan.
Yeah, Mariska does not drive a teal car. We all know that.
We all know it would be like a black Tesla because that's what she's worth.
It would be, and it's because she wants to save the planet and doesn't want to, use gasoline.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
So another witness is like, yeah, so here's this teal Nissan, and it had rental plates on it, like it was from a rental place. Police are like, okay, so all these witnesses, literally broad daylight, saw Sherri get arrested by this woman. So they're like, okay, let's call all the local law enforcement agencies to see who arrested her. Big shock. There is no report of Sherri being arrested by anyone in town.
Oh boy.
And so this seems to be not a missing persons case anymore, but an abduction.
A nabbing.
And yes, she was nabbed. Exactly. So when investigators look into, first, obviously, husband is always the first one they look at. Not always, but mostly. And so when investigators look into their marriage, they notice a few red flags pretty much right off the bat.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to tell you about these two real quick. So Sherri Dally, Michael Dally. So the way that Sherri's grandmother, Clarice, I don't know.
Clarice.
It's spelled Claris. So I guess it's
Clarice. Okay.
Right? It's kind of weird. But anyway,
you threw me. For a second, I felt smarter than you. And then I was like, oh, I don't know anymore.
I just wanted to put the spelling out just so anyone could, tell me what it's at.
Sure.
But I think you're probably right. So Clarice told the LA Times of Sherri and Michael, quote, she never looked at another boy after she met Mike. He was the one person in her life, her one and only love.
Oh, so sweet.
So sweet. So Sherri and Michael, they grew up together in Ventura County and actually began dating in high school when Sherri was a junior and Michael was a senior. They were both popular, but Michael was more of the outgoing and charming type, and Sherri was more into outdoorsy activities like 4-H club and something called Pioneer Girls.
Hey, yo. Wait a minute. Is that our band name? Hang on a second.
Hold on, everybody.
Girls with a Z, obviously. I'm loving it.
Obviously.
Pie is a pie icon, just like an apple pie. And then Onier. Yeah.
Our first album is called Nabbed. If you want to add a little bit of
guest featuring Mariska Hargitay. Yeah.
We want it to be like a tiny bit badass.
Yeah, exactly.
So she was more like that kind of gal. The couple married after high school in 1982, and they both worked at Vaughn's Supermarket in Oxnard, California.
Hmm.
And in 88, Sherri gave birth to their first son, whose name was Devin. And at this point, she left Vaughn's to open a home daycare center with a friend named Debbie. So in 1990, which is 2 years later, Sherri and Michael have another child, a son named Max. And around this time, or perhaps earlier, Michael begins cheating on Sherri regularly, sometimes with sex workers, sometimes not. He often used cocaine despite the family living paycheck to paycheck. So,
Yikes.
kind of taking money away from the family and what they needed and using it to buy drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird, I mean, to me, a little bit weird part is that friends and family said that Michael's infidelities and like his wild side he did not even try to keep them discreet at all.
Oh,
Like,
he was just
like super open about it.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So he starts seeing this woman named Sally Lowe pretty frequently. And meanwhile, Sherri's like trying her best. It's just so sad. She's trying her best to like be a doting wife and mother, like just trying to like,
Get
be
by,
good to the kids
like,
and
make it work.
Get by. Exactly. Make it work and make sure the kids are like happy and healthy. Basically, her whole life is focused on family. Meanwhile, Michael, despite his like indiscretions, is promoted to manager at Vaughn's. And I guess now that he's hit the big leagues, he's becoming an even worse person at home. Sally and Michael, so Sally's the girlfriend.
Okay.
Sally and Michael broke up in 1993, and in that same year in December, a woman named Diana Hahn, who's 32, applies for a job at Vaughn's, and Michael, the manager, hires her. Now, Diana is a former model who had some early success in print work, and her career never really took off. So she worked at the Vaughn's, but also supplemented her work with modeling gigs, like side jobs.
Gotcha.
And Michael and Diana immediately bonded over their shared heritage because both were multiracial with Japanese mothers, and that was something they were like very proud of.
Okay.
And so that was like a huge part of why they became fast friends and then more than friends.
Fast friends and then fast friends with benefits. And then, yes, I see. Okay.
And then just spiraling into chaos. Exactly. So in January 1994, so literally a month later, Michael and Diana began to have an affair. And according to friends and coworkers, again, they were not discreet whatsoever. And so Michael and Sherri's marriage is just like total chaos. Michael regularly calls Sherri fat, ugly, and boring.
Oh my God. What is his deal?
Like,
Ew.
so
Yuck.
wild. Like, I don't even know at this point, what are you doing? Like, you're
just leave. I don't understand. I just leave. Like, not her, like him. Like, they break up?
Well, you'll see.
Okay. I just don't understand if you hate someone that much and you're openly cheating on them, why don't you just break up?
Because you need the money for drugs? I don't know.
I don't know what the details were. It just on the surface makes no sense.
I don't want to speak for anyone, but I know I have read a lot of times where someone will stay because they still want that like family life, but they also want this like side life. You know what I mean? Like they want both. And it doesn't mean it's going to work or that you should have both. But I think sometimes people like that life of like sneaking around and like having affairs, but then also having a wife who cooks for you and a wife who, pays the bills and a wife who takes care of your kids. I think it's just like that dual lifestyle that some assholes really want.
I guess not for me, but okay. Okay.
Oh, really? Yeah, what a surprise.
Not really my cup of tea, if we're being wildly honest.
I would think probably not.
Yeah.
So Sherri at this point is like desperate to keep the family together. So she starts losing weight. She's sewing Michael like shirts and making him clothes. Like she's just trying to like keep him around and keep him interested in her and the family. It's just heartbreaking. Meanwhile, Michael is just like, fuck you, and continues his affair with Diana. He and Diana both have this like party lifestyle. They do drugs, they drink all the time, and they have a mutual interest in the occult, which I'm like, don't ruin the occult.
Come on, man. It's like I really liked having like no relatability to them. And now it's
exactly. Like nothing is sacred anymore.
I know.
So one of Michael's friends said that the couple, oh my God, they would suck each other's blood.
Excuse me? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
not.
I guess this is a different.
All of a sudden, we no longer relate anymore. So
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
good again.
I was like, I think it's a different kind of a cult than like our kind of cult.
You and I do not suck each other's blood. So I think we're okay.
I know this has been a rumor going around a while, but it's not true. Whatever you see in the tabloids.
Whatever's going on Reddit, we are not drinking each other's blood. We've asked, we've dabbled, we've talked about it, but the answer is a firm no. We've decided.
Yeah, we'd be lying if we said we haven't. No, but it hasn't happened. I promise.
We've at least considered it right now, but the answer is still no.
So they legitimately did this, and he also told his friends that he was on the dark side, which I'm like, if you tell someone you're on the dark side, it no longer feels to me that you're actually on the dark side. It seems like you're just trying too hard.
It's like when a skater kid's like, I'm a bad boy. And it's like, okay, well,
exactly.
You immediately just discredited yourself.
It's like, I'm really cool. Like, that's just not going to work.
It's like, if you have self-awareness about how awful you are, you're probably not that awful because you have the self-awareness, you know?
Yes. And it seems like he had no self-awareness. He really thought he was just like the baddest boy of all time. They had pagers, obviously. And this also hurt my feelings because I feel like this is our thing, or should be our thing, is that their code name for each other was 666.
Listen, you have driven it into everyone's head that our code name for each other is like lemon or something. So at least we have something to fall back on. But you're right. At some point, 666 should have been involved in something we did.
We could do.
Maybe we can drink each other's blood and then like draw in each other's blood like 666 or something. Like really,
we could do a squeeze of lemon in there just to sweeten it up a little bit. You know,
just to zhuzh it up. Yeah.
Shut up. Lord alive. Okay.
Also, the drinking blood thing, that was one of the episodes of My Strange Addiction, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
I'm pretty sure it was, where she like had friends that like allowed her to drink their blood. And I was like, that's a fucking friend, because I'm not that kind of friend.
I know, I've asked a million times.
But I remember there was a while where I was forcing Christine to watch My Strange Addiction with me at all turns. And
those were some weird nights we had, TLC.
And by weird, you mean the best. And like, I'm obsessed with My Strange Addiction is the show, My Strange Addiction. And the blood drinking one, that one I couldn't do. That was too much.
Like, because that show is how we met Sugar Bush. And that's when I was like, well, this is a great series.
Sugar Bush. Pour one out for our homie Sugar Bush. Haven't talked about him in a while.
He's still alive, right? Like, we're not saying R.I.P.
I never want to find out. He'll always have eternal life.
What are you trying to tell me? Okay. Whew.
Just pour one out for the spirit, for the undying spirit of Sugar Bush.
Oh, for God's sake. Now you're scaring everyone.
Okay.
666. Anyway, Michael also had other sexual dalliances that Diana and Sherri were unaware of. So he also at this point moved on from powder cocaine and began to smoke crack cocaine.
Great.
So he's just escalating left and right. At one point, Sherri actually confronted Diana in the Vaughn's parking lot, and they had a screaming match. I don't blame her. I probably would have. I don't know.
No, I don't blame her either.
Punched her head.
Punched her head?
I have no idea what I would have done. In the summer of 1995, Michael tells Sherri that he decided he needed to be alone to figure out what he needs, so he was going to move out. So he moved out and moved directly in with Diana.
Okay.
And so
way to really spread his wings. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Diana at this point is like, oh my gosh, she's moving in with me. I think we're going to have a family together. And she actually has this, like, gives me like the worst kind of goose cam. She had like professional family photos taken, like at the mall with Michael and Sherri's kids. So like he had them over and she like took them all to the mall to do like family portraits. It's just so bonkers.
It's literally that's literally the Michael Scott move of Skeezen's greetings.
It's like it's like too soon, but also like it's gonna always be too soon for this behavior.
Right. Right.
It's like never not soon enough. So they have these photos, and meanwhile, Sherri is like trying to get Michael back. So some of the things she does, she picks up his car from Diana's house and washes and waxes it for him, and then like brings it back.
Okay.
Sherri also loses 50 pounds. she changes her hair color and she starts to dress quote unquote sexier. It's just really sad.
Okay.
And then after 6 months, Michael realizes he cannot afford to support both his girlfriend and his wife and sons. So he moves back home with Sherri, which is what she was, wanting him to do anyway. And he says, "Okay, listen, I'm promising right now to end my affair with Diana."
You're great.
Heard
Okay,
that
yeah.
before.
For those of you who need to wonder, it is cheaper to only be committed to one person legally at a time. So,
Legally, in case you're wondering.
Maybe it's just cheaper to not have a girlfriend when you've got a wife at home. So,
And if one of them's named 666, like maybe that's the one who needs to go for now.
if there's one that wants to drink your blood and there's one that doesn't, maybe go with the one who doesn't want to drink your blood.
M and I should write just M. M should write a relationship book.
I'm pretty sure I'm
advice.
I'm the love guru. I've been told. So,
oh boy. Okay, so obviously he promises to end this affair with Diana. Doesn't even stop it for a second. He continues seeing Diana along with several other women, some of whom are sex workers, some of whom are not. And he just completely flaunts his relationship with Diana in front of Sherri. To give you an example, Diana gave Michael a pillowcase with her own face screen printed on it.
fuck off.
And he put it on a pillow in the bed he and Sherri slept in.
Oh my God.
Like, literally, she was sleeping in the bed with the girlfriend's face on a pillow.
That is just noodles all the way to the top. There's nothing else. Just the fucking bananas.
It's so bonkers. I can't. So Sherri again confronts Diana at Vaughn's and screams at her to stop sleeping with her husband and stop, I guess, giving him pillowcases with her face on it.
Please stop putting your faces on things I have to sleep next to.
Instead, in March of 1996, Diana and Michael take a Mexican vacation together. So they literally did the opposite.
Okay.
When they return, Diana... Sorry, what?
No, I'm just still in shock. That's all. Continue.
When they return, Diana tells a coworker at Vaughn's that she intends to make a human sacrifice for her boyfriend's birthday.
Okay, let's replay that. What did you say?
What's that?
Let's hear that one more time.
Instant replay. Okay. When they return from Mexico, their romantic Mexican getaway, Diana tells a coworker at Vaughn's that she intends to make a human sacrifice for her boyfriend's birthday.
Okay, well.
Now, can you imagine being the coworker and being like, "How was Mexico?" She's like,
I didn't even think about that. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Truly.
It's like the poor forgotten character in this story who's like, "What about me?"
I mean, truly, you came back from your honeymoon in Belize and I should have been like, "Any human sacrifices you're thinking about doing? Or you just love them that much?" And,
oh my God.
Do we get to hear more about what the coworker thought after that? Like, that's
nothing.
That's something you text. That's something you text your neighbors about to come over and like, we have like margarita gossip time. Like,
correct. Mundo. Correct. I mean, I literally, until this very moment, it didn't really occur to me where I was like, what about this coworker though? Like, that blows.
That's the moment you text your friends, "Bitch," and everyone knows exactly what that means.
Oh. You text your friend 666 and they're like, "I know what that means." Oh boy. So anyway, she says this and this is in March, and Michael's birthday, to be clear, is on May 21st because of course he has to be a fucking Gemini. Yep, we're not surprised, trust me.
I wish I was.
So I wish I was too. So throughout the month of April 1996, Diana meets Michael for his breaks around 4 a.m. and they kept going off alone together, according to coworkers. And then at the end of April, beginning of May, Sherri, the wife, gives Michael an ultimatum. She says, "You have to go to rehab for the drug use or I will file for divorce." So despite Michael's initial help, so back to the tan suit and the teal.
Oh, right. All of this was a fucking prequel. Okay.
Right. This is literally as like a, you wonder how I got here.
Sharp left turn and then right back into the sharp right turn.
Record scratch. And now it's back. Yep.
It literally, you could like at that, I imagine that woman at the desk hearing her coworker be like, "I'm going to do a human sacrifice for my husband. I imagine the record scratch there of like, you're probably wondering how I got myself into this situation.
This should literally be the story. Okay, TM. We should write the story from the perspective of the coworker at Vaughn's who's literally watching like the fights in the parking lot. Like finally they're gone in Mexico for a week and she's like, oh, things are back to normal. And then suddenly she shows up and it's like, uh-oh.
We should do it from the perspective of the teal Nissan, of just like watching like this weird.
Like, I didn't ask for this. Oh, yeah, the teal Nissan. So you remember. Anyway, so despite Michael's initial like sadness and concern with the search and his calls to the media, but which by the way, they have clips of that. I watched a Forensic Files episode about this, and they have clips of him like on camera holding a photo of her in front of their house, like as the camera pans and he's looking off into the distance, like the cheesiest 90s shot.
Ugh.
And I'm like, fuck you. So he calls the media and he's like, my wife, he calls her the backbone of our family. And I'm like, no shit.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. So he suddenly stops assisting the search. What a shock. And within 5 days of Sherri's disappearance, Michael, Diana, and Michael's and Sherri's sons go shopping for a jet ski.
Great.
So he also files for separation from Sherri while she's missing and makes inquiries into her retirement pension and her $50,000 life insurance policy.
Oh, really? Does he?
Which, yeah, right. Oh, really? Which, again, like life insurance alone is, I don't think necessarily always a red flag, but if it's literally in combination with, and now I want to buy a jet ski with my new girlfriend, let's look into it.
Whose blood I'm drinking? Yeah, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna be aware. Let's just leave it at that.
Does this jet ski allow for 2 passengers if we have some activities? Some
what color red are these jet skis in? Can it match my behaviors?
We don't want to stain the leather, you know.
That's exactly it.
So witnesses and security footage place Michaels at Vaughn's working at the time of the abduction. So he does have like a solid alibi. And investigators they start going into all the local car rental companies. And finally, they stumble upon a budget car rental. And so they ask, they were going around to all these car rental places and they ask, hey, has anyone named Michael Dally rented a car here? And they're like, no. So then they ask, has anyone named Diana Hahn? And they look through and they're like, oh, yes. And they're like, well, that was easy.
Okay.
She rented a teal Nissan.
Bingo.
So bingo, bango. So they find this teal Nissan. Sorry, I got myself all worked up and now I lost my place.
Listen, I can't imagine you not getting worked up after this story. It'd be weird if you're like, don't worry, I'm still cool and calm and collected. They
find this car and they just take a little peek-a-rooney inside and oh boy, is it covered in blood.
I'm sorry. I know this is like obviously a sad story, but that's probably my favorite sentence you've ever said. They took a little peek-a-rooney and I don't even remember what you just said, but it was like, and boy, did they find lots of blood.
Just like, don't even know. It's like not a shock. It's not a surprise. There's like no other way to say it.
Got it.
Now, interestingly, okay, so they find this car. They see that there's blood in it. The car was rented the day before the abduction on May 5th and returned the day after the abduction on May 7th. And the car was rented by Diana and paid for with a check written in green pen. Now,
okay.
Crime scene. So they asked the clerk, like, okay, you said it was Diana Hahn. Do you recognize this woman? And they hold up this picture of Diana, and it's her normal appearance, which she has long dark hair, and the person at the budget rental is like, no, I don't recognize that person. I don't think I saw them. So just another weird little twist. Apparently when they used luminol to check the back seat, they described the interior as lighting up like a Christmas tree. So that's fun.
Oh boy.
And then they find a few strands of blonde hair. And they're like, okay. So they do a little peek-a-rooney with a microscope. And they realize that this is not hair. This is actually, it has these like arrow shapes in it. In other words, it's synthetic and it is probably from a
Oh,
wig.
wig. Okay.
Yes, you called it. I was
Okay.
getting too flowery with my language, so you were like, just
Look,
say
you,
it.
you gave me time to figure it out. That's I didn't know. I didn't know originally, but now I feel way smart. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Then they go to Diana's house because they're like, hello, what's going on here? And she answers the door, first of all, in like a lingerie set, clearly having just gotten out of bed. And then behind her is literally Michael standing there in his underwear. And this is like days after his wife has disappeared, and he's been on the news going like, I miss her, I need her.
Right.
Woof.
Okay.
So they're like,
he's
please.
having a grand old time.
Yes, he's having a blast. He's on his jet ski. You know, things are good for him.
Aha. Okay.
She's asked to come down to the station to answer some questions, obviously. And Diana tells detectives that on the day of the murder, she actually went on a really long bike ride. And they're like,
all by herself, not a witness in sight.
my hair blowing in the wind.
Just wanted to be around me and my blonde wig. That's all.
So then they're like, well, do you have proof? And she's like, of course. And then she shows them some scratches on her forehead. And they're like, sorry, what? And she's like, this is because I fell off my bike.
What? Also, look how pretty my nail polish is. I painted it the day I went bike riding. Yeah. What? Okay.
That's nothing. It's nothing. She's like, oh, these scratches on my forehead, those are from falling off my bike. That's proof I went biking. And they were like, that's really not how this works.
Do you know what proof is? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no. Apparently she had also been 15 minutes late to work that day. She had arrived at 3:15 instead of 3 p.m. And she also told detectives that she just happened to lose her wallet and checkbook. And she had reported them missing a couple days after Sherri's abduction. How convenient. So investigators informed Diana that Michael is cheating on her with sex workers, but she does not seem to give a shit. And so they were like, well, that didn't work. So she wasn't phased, and they didn't have a body, and they only had circumstantial evidence. So they let her go, but her handwriting is sent in for analysis. So investigators at this point are like learning of all of these women that Michael is sleeping with, all of the drugs he's been purchasing and using. Around this time, Michael is starting to give away Sherri's possessions. Just like give them away.
Okay.
They take blood samples from the teal Nissan, that poor teal Nissan, and they prove that the blood belongs to Sherri. So they're like, well, that's a check mark right there, I suppose. And then on June 1st of 1996, two of the volunteer searchers unfortunately do find Sherri's decomposed remains in a wooded area approximately 12 miles from the target where she was abducted 26 days earlier.
Okay.
So now they have her body, and although it's been somewhat disturbed by animals, medical examiners are able to determine that she was stabbed about a dozen times around the face, neck, and chest with a serrated blade while handcuffed, so unable to fight back.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
That just adds a layer to it. They also find like a shard in her jawbone, and it turns out to be a piece of the serrated knife.
The knife snapped off in her fucking jaw?
Yeah, like a shard of it.
Good fucking bye.
I know. Okay, and then a side blade, like a hatchet or an axe, was then used to hack at Sherri's head and neck, nearly decapitating her.
What is with all these beheaded women in this shit? This fucking story.
I literally don't know how I didn't like put that together when you were telling your story. What is wrong
all
with
the
us?
6 times I talked about beheaded women, and by the way, let's add a 7th. Oh my gosh!
By the way,
terrible.
And this one has to be true, of course, of all of them. Yikes! I wish I could say this was just an urban legend.
Thanks for taking that bullet for me.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Okay, so anyway, she's getting beheaded.
Yes. So she's been nearly decapitated, and then it appears that she was stabbed inside the Nissan and then also outside the car, and she likely died pretty quickly after being abducted. Investigators had, like, you know how they had Diana Hahn on file and had her signature? Well, she was like, when they had brought her in, she was like, no, that form, that was fraudulent. Someone forged my signature. And so they were like, likely story. But they had to let her go, like I said, and they sent her signature in for analysis. But when they were looking at it, they were like, that is weird because the signature on the rental form is actually different from the one on her driver's license. So they're like, that's actually a little bit strange. So we're going to look into that. And meanwhile, investigators are trying to locate Diana's checkbook that she has, quote unquote, lost, and also subpoena her bank records. And when they find all this stuff, they discover that Diana had used personal checks from her missing checkbook, to purchase the following: a blonde wig at a discount wig shop on May 4th, 1996. She was identified by the clerk, and she used green pen to sign the check. Oh, by the way, all the checks were written in green pen, so that just adds to the whole thing.
Okay.
She had also made some additional strange purchases on the same day as buying the wig, including a tan suit, a hatchet, matches, and lighter fluid from a local department store.
Well, if that doesn't...
Again, more green ink. Investigators also discovered that Diana had used cash to purchase a fake police badge. So that would answer your thing of, I need to see a badge.
Uh-huh.
She thought it through. So she had a fake police badge from a place called Uniforms, Etc. Which, wow.
Yikes. Okay.
In Ventura. And the following day, so she had purchased that. Then she went back the next day and purchased handcuffs. I guess she had forgotten to buy handcuffs the first time. Or maybe she and what's his name used them up and she needed new ones. I don't know.
Right.
Who's to say?
Right. Holding each other down with their weird activities. Okay.
Yeah, who knows what their dalliances. Oh, his last name's Dally. Sorry.
I just picked that up at the same time too. I was
it's like a dilly dalliance. Oh my God. Okay.
Okay, let's end it.
Let's end it, please, quickly. Okay, so they've figured all this out, and then the forensic handwriting expert is like, hey, I've analyzed the signature on the budget rental form that Diana claimed was forged, and he found that even though the signature on the form didn't quite match her current signature, it actually matched the way she used to sign her name years earlier. So this is so fascinating. She had attempted to forge her own signature and thought she had done it and sort of had, but she had inadvertently used the same handwriting pattern she had used like decades before. So like
dummy.
As like a teen maybe or something, she wrote her name a certain way. And so she tried to fake it and like subconsciously wrote it the way she used to write it. So that was really interesting. Diana used a calling card from a payphone on May 6th and called a dry cleaner. So they talked to the dry cleaner, and the dry cleaner was like, oh yeah, this woman called and asked how to remove blood stains from the backseat of a car.
Can we just arrest her? Like, what is...
I'm having fun finding all these pieces. I don't know about you. But like, can you imagine, like, there's no like incognito mode on Google at this point. Like, you have to literally call the dry cleaner and be like, how do I get rid of blood? Like, you have to ask a real person.
Wow.
Not Jeeves.
Jeeves.
So at this point, a grand jury indicts Diana for murder and kidnapping, but doesn't indict Michael Dally. So Diana is arrested, finally, for the kidnapping and murder of Sherri Dally on August 2nd, 1996. They find, literally in her purse, when she's taken into custody, they find the damn green pen that was used to write the checks.
The smoking gun.
Rid of that. A smoking gun, literally, a green pen.
Yeah.
And she, not literally, obviously, but you know what I mean. So they find that damn pen and they literally have someone analyze it, and it's the same ink. So that's like smoking gun, like you said. Yeah. After Diana's arrest, Michael continues to see sex workers and do drugs like nothing has changed or happened.
Quelle surprise.
And I'm just sad about, thank God, like the grandparents were alive, but like these poor kids are in the middle of this, you know? It's just really awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when they search Diana's house, they find that she is what Forensic Files calls, quote, a master of disguise. I'm
really?
Like, honestly, I don't think she's that much of a master after what we
From going to Uniforms, etc., and getting a synthetic weave or a synthetic wig?
Literally, they find wigs, outfits. They find photos of her in different getups because she's like a model and does all these side gigs. So she has all these different like outfits and wigs and things like that. Investigators began to connect like these phone calls that had been made between Diana and Michael the day of the murder. There were a bunch of them. And then Sally Lowe. So the reason I mentioned her earlier, she was Michael's like former girlfriend that they had dated during Sherri and Michael's marriage. So she comes forward and she's like, yeah, I just want to speak out and say my part. When he and I dated, I remember that he would often fantasize aloud about Sherri's murder.
Ew.
And
Okay.
that's a bad sign. She says that he wanted Sherri kidnapped and stabbed, then asked her if she would do
Specifically.
it. Right? I'm like, it's horrifying. So he asked her if she would do it, and she's like, I didn't take him seriously, and then we broke up after that. So that must just be the
Ew.
shittiest feeling to be like, oh my god, he was serious that whole time. Ugh.
Well, and also, yeah, that, and also, like, Diana, is that her name, Diana?
Yeah.
She, like, didn't she literally say, like, oh, I want to do a human sacrifice for him? So, like, they were both, like, on the same track. Like, they both wanted to.
I mean, he probably brought that up to her, like, hey, I want her to die. Consider it a
and he
human
was-
sacrifice.
And she was like, done. She was like, easy.
I love you, 666. Ugh. Okay. It's disgusting.
Yikes.
So police also noted, obviously, Michael's lack of concern for Sherri. Friends and coworkers told police that Michael used to say he'll never get a divorce. Like, basically, like, she won't do it or they won't ever go through with it. Tamara Leach, who was described as a petty criminal who had several liaisons with Michael, revealed that he told her, quote, I guess I'm a single parent now, before Sherri was even found. So, like, just an insensitive dickhead.
Oh, no.
Like, at the least. And then on November 15th, 1996, Michael was indicted for murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, and special circumstance of financial gain, which I hadn't heard before.
Wow.
And this mofo pleads not guilty. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well. Okay.
My favorite line from him is always, okay, well. And that's the end of the sentence. Okay,
It's literally, I don't know what else to say. I'm just like, okay.
Diana, I see everything you're saying in those 2 words. Don't worry.
Thank you.
I speak M. Okay. So Diana is re-indicted the same day with the added latter charges. So they were basically like, oh, yeah. We want to indict her on those ones too. So she pleads not guilty. So in the summer of 1997 is when Diana's trial begins before Michael's. The jury is chosen from Santa Barbara County to get out of the area because of tainted, media coverage. The prosecution contends that Diana and Michael came up with the elaborate murder scheme to kill Sherri and avoid a costly divorce, in addition to collecting her life insurance. And they call over 125 witnesses to the stand.
Wow.
Yeah. So the defense argues that though she may have unwittingly purchased some of the items used in the kidnapping, Diana's innocent. And one of the sex workers Michael had been seeing was framing her, and that Michael probably helped her to do so. So
Okay.
That's Diana's defense.
Got it.
On September 26, 97, however, Diana was found guilty on the charges of murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy in the death of Sherri Dally. A month later, on October 27th, Diana was spared execution and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And then the following winter begins Michael's trial, in which the prosecution argued that Michael had convinced Diana, his co-conspirator, to help him plan and carry out the murder of his wife, Sherri Dally, to avoid a divorce and to cash in on her retirement and life insurance policies so that he could maintain his party lifestyle. The case against Michael was largely circumstantial and relied mainly on the over 100 witnesses, and they're basically to bring up the incriminating comments and his suspicious actions. And the prosecution painted him as a drug-addled, sex-addicted sociopath, and they had sex workers and drug dealers on the witness list to add to this whole picture they were painting. And the defense throws Diana Hahn under the bus and contends that she is an obsessed, Satan-worshipping mistress who went rogue and murdered the woman she viewed as her competition, Sherri. So basically, both of their defense teams argued that it was the other one's doing.
Right.
So like, wow, what a match made in heaven, these two.
I know.
Sorry.
Perfect chaos is what I call that.
Perfect chaos. The defense say that, Diana went rogue. She was, I want to say this instant replay, she is an obsessed Satan-worshipping mistress who went rogue and murdered the woman she viewed as her competition, Sherri.
I was going to say that. I was like, what a title to like walk out on.
Combination of words.
Truly, what a sentence,
So the defense calls many character witnesses, and Michael's father offers an alibi, which is demonstrated to be false by the prosecution's witnesses. The defense team also reiterates that there is no evidence that ties him directly to the abduction since he was at work at Vaughn's at the time. However, on April 3rd, 1998, Michael Dally is convicted of murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, and 2 special circumstances of financial gain, making him eligible for the death penalty. Oh boy, things are getting heated. Then on June 9th, 1998, Michael is instead sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and is ordered to pay $10,000 in restitution to the state and $15,000 in restitution to Sherri's family. So that is the end of their trials. I have a couple lines of an epilogue, I suppose. The Dally children are sent to live with their paternal grandparents. Diana and Michael both blamed each other for everything that transpired, and anytime a journalist even came to talk to them at all, they would blame each other at any given chance. In one prison interview with Michael that was featured on Forensic Files, a reporter asked him to describe Diana's and Sherri's relationship, and he said, "Not good. They hated each other. They both wanted me."
Okay, yikes and gross. But I like how it just started with not good.
Not good. Literally without even a verb. Just not good.
Could be better.
Was,
good, not great.
Smiling. Yeah, good, not great. And Sherri's mother in the same episode said, Michael had also said, "It's not my fault that 2 women love me." It's
yikes.
What a sick bastard.
That alone makes me hate him despite all the other things.
Truly, that alone is enough. Yeah.
That alone, if I heard him say that at a party, I would walk away and be like, okay,
oh yeah,
we're not meant to be.
You're like, I don't actually think I want to suck your blood after all, but thanks for asking.
You know what? That's exactly it. You find someone else to suck your blood.
So both Diana and Michael appeal their convictions, but by 2001, both are denied. Eventually, a wrongful death suit against Diana Hahn awards Devin and Max, so the 2 sons, $6.4 million, which is way better than the $15,000 Michael had to pay.
I was going to say.
Michael Dally was granted an investigation into clemency by Governor Jerry Brown, but nothing came of it, as far as we know. That was in 2018. Diana Hahn and Michael Dally are currently serving their sentences at Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla and, respectively, California State Prison in Lancaster. Devin Dally said the oldest son, has spoken publicly in support of his father's innocence, which is very interesting.
Who?
The son,
Devin.
Son?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. That must be just so hard.
Wow.
Max has never spoken publicly nor issued any sort of statement regarding his mother's murder and his father's incarceration for the crime. Whew. So that's the story. That is the story of Sherri Dally.
That's a lot to take in. That sucks. That is awful.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Well, and also their kids are our age, right? They're only a couple years older than us.
Yes, yeah. They were born in, I think, 86 and 88.
Wow.
I know.
That's crazy that the stories you tell, I know this is such a duh moment, but it's wild when you tell stories that are more recent and people you're talking about are just walking around. Whenever they're super far removed and a distant true crime, it's so different versus people who were affected by that are just our age living life. That's crazy. It's really
wild, and that's why it makes me really anxious sometimes to cover some of these. But I have gotten messages from people on other cases who were I was sorority sisters with this person, or right. I knew Bryce Pissa's family, or whatever it might be, which is always so fascinating to me. And it's always been very kind and respectful and supportive, but sometimes they add information that I never would have found online, that kind of thing. So it is really crazy. Adds a scary layer.
I do have one update. Let me see if I can find it real quick because I did not plan to do this, but you just reminded me. Let's see. Well, I don't think I'm going to be able to find it, so I'll have to paraphrase it, but someone did reach out to me and said that they had a friend who is very well known in Anonymous, and said that apparently this member of Anonymous listens to the show and listened to the episode, and did say that I got a few things wrong, but for the most part, they were impressed and they liked it. So not to switch gears totally, but before I forgot,
what?
I know. So I'm like kind of scared. I was like, I wish I could read the message, but like, I was like, such a sigh of relief of like, okay, so you're not going to like find my deepest, darkest secrets I don't even know I have and do something about it. So thank you. I'm glad that I like didn't make enemies out of Anonymous. That's like all I've ever wanted.
I hope we meet you at a live show and you're not going to tell us who you are, but I hope we meet you just so I can like
just show up in a V for Vendetta mask and like a Guy Fawkes mask and I'll know exactly who you are. So
yeah, no one else will know. Don't worry about it. Just us. That's crazy.
I did get some things wrong. That was all the information I got, so it wasn't 100% accurate, but it was pretty accurate. So
yay! Well, that's all we hope for sometimes. So hooray! Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you are a member of Anonymous, let us know, or don't, because you're not really allowed.
And continue to be on our side and don't do anything mean to us. Love you. Thank you.
Oh boy. All right.
Okay.
Shall we?
Anyway, and
that's
why
we
drink.